And we are back. Joining us, as we said earlier, for our first conversation is the Commissioner of Police, Chestor Williams. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Gavin. It's good to see you and open your eyes.
Good to see you as well.
And Marlene, you've been here for quite some time. You're the pioneer of this horse.
Well, and I can tell the difference between your outfit changes, and this is not the regular Commissioner Williams we see.
Well, I noticed you have an attorney, so I came ready for battle. So I make sure I put on my battlefield uniform. Huh?
Either that or you were in the battlefield over the course of the night. So let's start with the matter. We've received reports that there was a drug plane found around the coastal road this morning. Would you like to comment on that?
I have no comments on that at this time. Whenever the time is right, then we'll release what needs to be released.
Will you at least confirm that a plane was found?
At this time, no.
But you've been working all night, as you told us.
Yeah, I've been out all night. I've been up all night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not partying, though.
No, not partying, Gavin.
So we won't be able to get from you whether or not it's true. But if we are to go off the reports that we've gotten so far, if this particular instance is true, it still brings the issue of the planes that are being found in many different parts of this country on a frequent basis as a part of the conversation. Whether or not you confirm last night's incident, we know we have a problem.
Well, the issue of plane landing is not only frequent in Belize, but in the entire Central American countries. Mm-hmm. So we're just one of those countries, unfortunately, and we happen to have the same dilemma that they do. But we try our best to see how we can deal with the issues as they come along.
I don't know if that's enough to comfort the public with what we've been seeing, because
no matter what,
and maybe you have more, you can provide the information, but when we look at the frequency, we're looking at every few weeks there is a plane that is found, and it doesn't seem to be that it's slowing down at all.
Marlene, no matter what I say, some sector of the public is not going to be comforted. So I'm not here to comfort nobody. Mm-hmm. I'm here to speak the truth and nothing but the truth. At the end of the day, I know what our department have been doing and continue to do to deal with the plane issues. Mm-hmm. And it is not an easy task. So those who sit and want to criticize us and think that we're not doing nothing, I say to them, come and join us and you'll see the difficulty that we have. Yeah. Many a times our officers have sleepless nights out in the jungle, waiting for planes to come, have to be running here, running there. And these drug traffickers are no novice. Mm-hmm. They're not persons who move around with baton or a piece of carrots. Mm-hmm. They move around with big guns. So in addition to the sleepless nights, our officers' lives are as at risk because anything could happen. Yeah. But despite that, we're criticized, but we don't care. At the end of the day, when you look at the whole scheme of these plane landings, on a nightly basis, we have sometimes up to 3 trucks coming our way. And we have to be out there. And while we are bashed or criticized for the few that land, we get no credit for those that we deter. Mm-hmm. Because the truth is, our efforts do deter a lot, and they go to either Mexico or Guatemala.
What is the deterrent that you speak of? And to be fair, I think if you would let the public know that you successfully deterred a plane, it may be useful in changing the image. But tell us what is actually done. So you spoke of 3 trucks maybe per night. What is the police department doing to be able to mitigate what is taking place?
I'm not going to go into full details of our operational strategy, but there's a lot that we do that we know have deterred plane landings. We have had several instances where plane attempts to land and our presence caused them not to land. Mm-hmm. And they have to go and land elsewhere. And can you imagine 3 trucks a night? And we have a landing maybe once a month. We're doing pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, people don't see that.
And well, I also wanted to ask, because as you said earlier, this is an international and a huge problem for our region. And we also know that the elements who are involved and who are responsible for these things have lots of resources behind them. Is it that are we adequately prepared then to deal with this threat, knowing how big and how onerous it is?
Well, the truth is, Gavin, we are not. There's a lot more that is required for us to be able to adequately deal with the situation as we may want to. But may I also remind you that even in countries like Mexico and Guatemala that do have far more resources than we do, it happens there too. Yes, their success rate in interception is better than ours, but they still have some lands that they do not intercept. And so there are several things that we want. We are working with the U.S. Embassy, with the DEA, and there are several things that we have in the pipeline. We're hoping to come on stream by the end of this year. And once those come on stream, then we think that we'll be in a more better position to be able to combat this problem.
I think you noted what is the most critical point here, which is the danger that comes with this type of activity. And clearly, the security personnel are the ones on the front line. We acknowledge that. But I think the fear that the public has is if this problem continues unabated, the type of violence that we know happens when there is a very active drug trade can spread into communities.
Well, I don't know what to mean by unabated, because it's not that we're not doing anything. We're doing what we can, and I think that we're doing well. I do not foresee us becoming a place like Mexico, where cartels practically own certain part of Mexico. That is not going to happen. I think that our presence in certain areas have mitigated the issue of these landings significantly, and there are several things that we're doing to be able to enhance the efforts that we're doing. And at the end of the day, when we look at the whole scheme of things, these drug traffickers are persons who come from Mexico, and you find that they used to prefer landing near the borders. That way they don't have to travel through the country with these convoy of vehicles with heavily armed men and so forth, because that put them at a greater risk of being caught. So landing in the border area is more convenient to them, so they land the plane, and then in a matter of minutes, they're over the Mexican side out of our domain. And we have now put things in place in the border areas. So you're seeing now that the landings have moved from the border areas, and the last two landings we have, the one in Paynes Creek and the one in Monkey River, are in extremely remote areas and on conditions that we expect a plane to land, because there's no airstrip there. But the pilots are so skillful that they were able to land the plane in a rough terrain, open area. So we have to now guard against things, and I try to do it in a way where it's close to the sea. So instead of moving by land, they move through sea. And it becomes difficult for the Coast Guard, who controls or who polices the marine domain, because the sea is so huge and the route is so many. And so it's like looking for a boat with drugs in the sea is like looking for a needle in a haystack. So it becomes extremely challenging.
I acknowledge that you don't accept what my statement in terms of saying it continues unabated. But what we can say factually is that we're seeing far more than we've ever seen.
Not true, Marlene.
Once a month, Commissioner Williams probably started about a year ago.
The truth is, last year we had far less landings than the previous year.
And the year before that?
The year before that, likewise. And this year, I think we have had 2 or 3 for this year. Now, the truth is, for the month of January, when we had 2, I believe, that would have been 1 more than last year. And for the whole year, for the year so far, 3. I still won't think that it falls within the domain of saying it is. Yes, by standard-wise, it happened too frequent. People would say that. But when you compare it to the amount of trucks that we monitor every night, I think it is quite acceptable.
So the comparative data that you're using is looking at what you know is flying over our airspace. The comparative data that we use as the public, those not involved in the military function, is how many times we actually see a plane in this country on some random part of the country. And that has been more frequent, I would say, within the past 2 years than any other time in our history.
Well, the truth is, Marlene, the drug activity picked up about 2 years ago. And I have said in previous interviews, I had gone to Colombia in 2018 twice on official visits. And on those occasions that I went to Colombia, when we were briefed by the Colombian police, they said to us that there is a huge amount of cocaine in Colombia, so much more than they have ever seen. And there was an urgent need for the cartels to get these drugs out of Colombia and get it to North America. And so it is because of that that we're seeing this increase. The cartels are trying to get the drugs out to get it to North America where the market is. And so it is going to continue until those drugs are out of Colombia. So it is a difficult thing that we have to contend with, but at the end of the day, we're not going to use an excuse. We must try to do as best as we can to be able to intercept whenever they come.
What we do know, though, is that when a plane lands, there's a crew that has to work on the ground.
Yes, security and unloading.
There has to be people in this country who are involved in coordinating and in getting the drugs out.
And I have always said
why
that.
have we haven't seen any arrests for that as yet in 2 years?
I think, Marlene, we have made arrests for plane landings already.
No, but for those who coordinate on the ground, the persons who are taking the calls from the Colombians or the Mexicans or whoever it is.
It is not as easy as you may think it is, Marlene. It doesn't work like that. And Gavin, being an attorney, will tell you. It's not because I know that this person is involved or suspect that this person is involved in these plane landings, I can just go and arrest that person. There's a process that must occur. And drug traffickers aren't foolish. They don't go and save money in the bank. So we cannot go to FIU and say, give me so-and-so bank statement to see what money he's putting in the bank. We have done other things to target those persons. I'm not going to say here what those stuff are, because at the end of the day, we continue to do it with other persons who we believe are involved. But there are several things that we have done to persons we believe are involved in these activities. And yes, we understand and we know that there are people within our country, Belizeans who are involved and who coordinates these landings. And those are the persons that we have been going after.
Whether you call them critics or conspiracy theorists, one of the main partners that people believe may be involved is whether it's persons who work within the police department or within the security forces or within the government.
I'm not going to be naive and think that there are not persons within security forces who are involved. We have intelligence that, yes, there are certain persons in security forces who are involved, and we are monitoring those persons as well. But at the end of the day, too, those persons are not going to move so stupidly to the extent that they'll allow themselves to be caught. So it takes a whole deal of things to be able to get where we want to go. But at the end of the day, you're right, we do believe that security forces are involved, and we continue to look at that.
What frustrates you about what you're seeing? I mean, when you talk about your own men being involved, again, something that you say you were championing as a priority under your leadership, how do you manage that?
No matter what we do, there will always be those persons who will not toe the line that we want them to toe. There's no perfect organization in the world. Everywhere you go, where there's an organization, you're dealing with human and human elements. The fact that you're dealing with human, they're immune to things that other persons would do. And so, while it frustrates us to know that there may be few among us who are working with these cartels, it is a matter for us to do what we can to be able to expose them, and at the same time to be able to see what we can do to make our department more better. And I am not going to sit and think that as commissioner I can foster a perfect police department. That is not going to happen. Even if God were to come to be the commissioner of police, that will still not happen. People are going to be people. When they want to do certain things, they're going to try to do it. When there is that appeal for them to do certain things, it is so attractive, they may want to take a shot at it, and so we have to deal with it.
You've spoken of quite a number of challenges when it comes to dealing with the situation. One, you said that there are about 3 trucks that look like they're going to land in Belize almost on a nightly basis. You acknowledge that there are security forces involved in coordinating these efforts. You speak of your knowledge and your intelligence from the Colombians saying that there is an increased traffic because they have too much product and they need to get it into North America. What is your goal in being able to mitigate this?
Well, my goal would be to stop it, but I'm not going to be naive again. I know I cannot stop it. The police department, as much as we work in tandem with the BDF, the Coast Guard, we cannot stop it. And since we cannot do that, then we must do our next best, which is to reduce the amount that lands. And I do believe that we're doing good at that. If you ask if we can do better, I will say yes. But it requires that we get additional resources to be able to become more effective. So what I would want to see is for us to be able to get the additional resources that we need as soon as possible.
What type of resources?
We need to get a radar that detects those planes when they dip below the 3,000 feet. We need to get...
So you're saying the recent radar that was acquired isn't sufficient?
We have not acquired that radar. That should come in November.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go into too much specifics where that radar is concerned and its capabilities. But that radar will still not solve our problem. We still need an additional radar to go along with that. And we're trying to see how we can work with the DEA to get that additional radar. So even in terms of equipments that we use, the body armors that we use, when we go out there and face these drug traffickers.
Training?
Yes, training, again, are things that we need. There are a number of things that we would want in order for us to be able to feel more comfortable dealing with these drug traffickers. But as vulnerable as we are, we're still not deterred by these persons. We still go out every night to meet them without hesitation. We put our lives on the line. And despite that, we're still criticized by people who don't know what we're doing or who won't even spend a minute to do the work that we're doing. But those are what you call the vicissitudes of life, so we just live with it.
And how, where is this issue then of, planes and trafficking in terms of priorities of the departments and issue? Because we know that we have a lot of other problems. There's a lot of other work that the department has to do as well. Just countrywide, looking at, crime from the smallest crimes to the big. So where does this fall in, and where does this fall in terms of national importance for the department?
The truth is, Gavin, it is one of our top priorities. And many nights, our officers who would be responsible to patrol the cities and towns and villages have to be withdrawn and sent into the bushes to wait for planes. So the town, the cities, the villages are left open because the officers are occupied in the bushes waiting for plane. But we give the plane a priority because to every plane that lands in our country, it gives us a black eye. And we want to do what we can to prevent it as much as we can. So it is one of our top priorities.
You speak of the need for additional resources to be able to address this problem. Where have you put in your request? You said for the radar, you're working with the DEA. We've seen many times where the police establish specialized units to be able to work or focus on one problem.
We have a specialized unit already that deals with drugs. That is the anti-narcotics unit.
But you say you're taking police officers out of villages where they should be keeping security to put them
Marlene,
in.
Because you have to understand that when we have a truck coming, because we cannot detect exactly where it is going to land, we have several potential landing spots in the country. The number of persons at ANU is not sufficient. And so we have to take from our regular police officers and the other specialized unit, like the MIT, the gang suppression unit, the SPU, to be a part of the response to deal with these plane landings. And so we deploy in several areas across the country in the event that the plane would land at any of those potential locations. And so that is why I said we take away officers from off the streets who would routinely be patrolling to go and deal with the issue of plane landings. And even with that, at times, like I said before, while we cover the potential landing spots that we know, we're seeing now that they're going to land into areas that we won't even class as potential landing spots. So we have to now broaden or extend our operations even greater.
You said that you feel you don't see Belize becoming subjected to the type of crimes that are tied to drug trafficking as we see in Mexico. But that is the predominant fear that people have in this country.
And it is a reasonable fear. I don't see, I'm not going to say that having that fear is being unreasonable. Mexico is our border, is our neighbor, we have a border with them, and the problem is as far as Chetumal. Chetumal is right there next to us, so people, the fear is a reasonable one.
So what do you say to people to give some level of, to allow them to know that this problem is being addressed aggressively, that we are able to prevent having the types of crimes that we see just right across the border?
Like I said, Marlene, the interest of the drug traffickers is to land the plane and get the drugs out of the country. Those drugs that are taken off these planes when they land do not stay in Belize, they go. And I don't think they stay in Belize for more than 24 hours. The quicker they get it over, the better it is. The persons who come from Mexico to facilitate the landings, they go back right away. Yes, like I said, they may have a few connections in Belize, but those connections really and truly don't have the influence that the drug traffickers in Mexico do have. And the fact that we have now stepped up our presence in the vulnerable border areas will assist us to be able to ensure we keep control of our country from drug traffickers. Now, I didn't say that we don't have drug trafficking associated crimes. We do, but not to the magnitude that Mexico have. And we must do our best to ensure that we don't reach the state that Mexico have reached. The BDF is a very integral part of our drug fighting operations. And for the most part, we use the seat of, or whatever the name is, the farmer, they used to be BSAG. They have now changed the name to Special Operating Team or whatever. So they too, who are very highly trained and highly skilled, are a part of our operations, especially in the border areas, to ensure that we maintain integrity of our borders from those.
So it's joint efforts, it's BDF, it's Coast Guard as well that's been involved.
Yes, ma'am, yeah.
Well, we have a lot to talk about, but before I do, when will we get the details of the recent landing?
You're still on this, Marlene.
Well, we know.
When the time is right, you'll get what needs to be obtained.
Today?
I would want to think before the day ends today.
Well, we have tried to get the details from you. You know, what happens a lot of times is if you don't provide the information, people start to make up information when there's a void. So
if I provide it, they're still going to make up.
But there was a plane that landed on the coastal road last night, and so we do have enough sources to confirm that.
Can you give me a source name, Marlene?
No, well, that's not what we do either. So, but the issue, and I appreciate you coming in and at least telling us what is being done. And I think respectfully, I think people want to hear that there is a no-nonsense, aggressive policy that's being taken, because we have a fear. And I think the fear is based on fact of what we see in other countries. So we will keep on following, but I do want to take the opportunity to move into other issues since we have you here as well. And the other issue is looking at crime in the country. Now, we often debate about numbers, and I think that one of the things that we're joined by the Crime Observatory, talking about their collection of data and what we're seeing. We're still seeing a murder rate of about 30 or a little bit over per year, a little bit of a dip, but still very high. Let's talk about what we're seeing in this country and what type of strategies we're using.
Good. And again, Marlene, when it comes to the issue of crime, it's a concern for us.
Well, it's a priority for you,
yes,
I'd imagine.
Exactly. And as the Commissioner of Police, there's a lot that I continue to do along with my senior command to be able to implement effective strategy to combat the crime problem. But as I've always said, that the crime issue spans beyond the police. We have done so many work with young people. We have engaged the CYDP. We have engaged CRD. We have engaged many other organizations to see how they can assist in the issue of fighting crime, particularly those that involve young people in gangs. But the truth is, the criminal propensity of our young people have changed. And as much as you try to show them that violence is not the way, and try to show them the importance of living in peace and harmony with each other, you still see that some of them just are hell-bent on trying to eliminate others. And I think that there is a great deal of parenting issues that need to be addressed, because for the most part, and I'm not saying that every parent of these gang men are not doing what they should be doing, because I've also seen cases where some parents are doing what they can, but the child is just so hell-bent on doing his or her own thing, or mostly his own thing. And so there need to be
Can I just enter, because gang culture in itself, there's a recruitment effort that takes place. It's not so much of a child just being born bad and wants to be a gang member.
Totally agree.
Environment has a lot to do with it.
Yes, the environment may have a lot to do with it, but also how a person sees himself also have a lot to do with it. Because you could grow up in a crime-infested area, that does not mean that you have to be a criminal. It also have a lot to do with how you see yourself, what you're taught at home.
But it's different if I live in an area where there are people actively recruiting versus living in an area where there's nobody recruiting.
There's a difference, because, and again, I just want to say that not every person who live in a gang area are gang members.
Yeah.
Not every person who live in a gang area are criminals.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what I'm saying. It have a lot to do with you, the individual. But how you see yourself, and how much you can resist peer pressure, because a lot have to do with peer pressure. And we find that some of our young people don't have that. They're more followers than leaders. So that creates a problem as well.
And I will completely agree with you. I think that one of the misconceptions people have is they mark an area as a gang area and everyone there must be a criminal.
Yeah,
but
that's not true.
That's not the case. But what has happened, the residual effect of that, is that even someone who's not a criminal and lives in that area are bound by the turf wars that take place. So you can be a 17-year-old, 16-year-old child living in one area and still can't leave, even though I'm not associated with the gangs.
Not in all cases, though.
But it does exist.
It exists to some extent, but for the most part, Marianne, to be truthful, when you find that do occur, it's because that 17-year-old would have, to some extent, tied himself to the gang in the area. Because I can tell you, I know persons who are from gang areas in Belize City, and they can move around anywhere in the city without any kind of fear. But if it is that you may tie yourself with the gang in the area, you might not be a gang member, but you hang with them at times, and the fact that the other gangs see you hanging with them, then they then tie you to that gang, and then that's where the danger comes in. And
I also wanted to ask you about something you said earlier in terms of when you said that the criminal propensity of people has changed. I would just want to go into a little bit more specifics about what you mean by sort of the changes that you have seen, and what are the ways in which the police department is sort of adapting and addressing the issues as they go forward.
Yeah, what I meant by that is that I know as a child growing up, if my mother scold me, I am scared. If the neighbor lash me, I can't go and say nothing to my mother. I am scared. So I wouldn't even dare try to do something wrong, because I know what I'm going to get when I get home. But most of the children we're seeing today being raised, they don't care. They walk the streets, they use the most obscene language. Nobody can tell them nothing. Instead of them being afraid of the elders, it's the other way around. The elders are afraid of them. And if we have an issue with somebody back in those days, we put up a hand fight. Today, there's no more hand fight. Pretty fighting day is done. You say something to someone that they don't like, they go get their gun, and believe you me, when they say they're going for their gun and then they come back, please believe them, because they're going for it, and then they come back. They go for a gun, come back, and they use it. Maybe afterwards they may have regrets, but the fact is, once you pull that trigger, that bullet cannot return. Yeah. You have to deal with the consequence of it.
You know, I think it sounds nostalgic the way you talk, and I think that naturally a lot of Belizeans have had that very same thought. But what we want to hear from the commissioners, what's being done to address it? So what are we doing about the guns on the streets? What are we doing? I mean, I know the recent changes in terms of looking at people who have licensed guns, but those aren't really the guns being used in crimes, are they?
The effort, Marlene, is not looking at licensed guns. The effort is to curtail the sale of ammunition to licensed gun holders, because we have found out that many of the ammunitions used on our streets are ammunitions that are locally purchased, which means that licensed firearm holders are buying the bullets legally and then sell it illegally to the gang members on the streets. And so that is what we're trying to control. Now, in terms of what we're doing, we have been going after gang members. We have been applying the gang law. Yeah. We have charged a number of gang members under the gang law. Unfortunately, when they go to court and they plead guilty, the court gives them time to pay. They're given time to pay. What we do now is that we monitor to see when the time to pay expires. And then we go to the court, get the warrant, and we take them to prison. Mm-hmm. Next thing that we're doing is that we have constant operations going after the gang members. So on a daily basis, if you live in the gang-infested areas, you'll see a heavy police presence. Mm-hmm. And we're going after these gang members. We're conducting search of their persons, vehicles, homes, their bases, whatever, with a view to see how we can take that opportunity from them that they may need to commit crime. And in addition to that, we have also worked in tandem with CYDP still. Because I do believe that if it is that you have a person who may have been a gang member and want to make that change, yes, we must help them to make that change. Mm-hmm. So we still use CYDP as a part of our crime fighting strategy. Hopefully, within the next few days, we're going to hire a gang or a conflict, what's the name I call this officer? Like
a mediator?
Like a mediator,
okay.
Right? Who will then be able to assist us to coordinate with CYDP in order to do more mediation and more interventions. And that person is an experienced person where gang and these type of things are concerned. So we'll see how that goes when that person come on board. But at the end of the day, I would like to appeal to parents and girlfriends that they must continue to harp to the young men in their lives the importance of remaining alive, respecting their lives, respecting the lives of others, because at the end of the day, when things happen to them, look at how bad they are. They're persons who are left behind to suffer and mourn. Mm-hmm. And so parents and girlfriends need to play a more active role in the lives of these young men and try to keep them to do the right thing.
Well, beyond that, they also become a part of the collateral damage.
Yes,
we've seen young girls being killed.
Shot. Exactly.
We've seen elderly people being shot when a house is targeted. We've seen children and babies being shot as a result. And I think these are the things, I often feel that maybe the next time a child gets shot, it'll shake us up and get us focused on the issue. But nonetheless, it continues. The change, as you spoke of, in terms of how crime plays out in this country, and not just Belize City anymore, is that there seems to be a total disregard for who sees, what time of day it is, who the actual, whether you'll catch the actual target or everybody in that area, or even just, as I said before, whether it's a female, whether it's a child, whether it's an elderly person. What does that indicate to you, and what can we do to be able to change specific, because that is a major threat to security, and to the sense of security people have.
That goes to what I said again in terms of the criminal propensity. I know if you would speak to some of the older gang members, they will say to you that women, children are no game. They're off limits. The younger ones today, they have no regards to nobody. Whether you're a woman, you're a children, you're elderly, they don't care. So they're a more vicious generation. But I want to say this, Marlene. Last year, we did a lot to be able to control the gang killings. And we succeeded significantly. But while we control the gang killings, we saw other types of killings just came and dominate. The alcohol consumption killings, the socializing. I have said socializing have become a murderous word now. And there are some people are socializing.
Well, I wish your police officers would stop saying it, because it's not just socializing. It's drinking or consuming drugs.
It's socializing. They're having a social event, a party or something in a yard.
But socializing can be with or without alcohol.
Well, for the most part, it's with alcohol, right? And every time you hear that word, socializing, somebody's going to die. And these killings are not gang members killing. The people who are supposed to be rational like you and I. You know, so we try to control one, I will see another one just come up. People who expect would be more rational, they drink, they consume alcohol and become irrational, and they do things that they would normally do when they're not consuming alcohol. So that's an issue for us as well.
And I think it's a valid point, and we've spoken many times of looking at the enforcement of some of the legislations and regulations that do exist when it comes to liquor licenses and you know, people being inebriated in public and all of these things. But before we move into that, there's also the migration of crime.
Yes.
We are seeing where some of the very same people who have been involved or have family relatives in Belize City associated with gangs now participating in gang-related crimes and murders beyond the city borders. You know, let me start with issues in Hattieville. We have these cases that are reported and they're just a stone's throw away from the police booth. How are things like this possible?
Marlene, it takes a matter of seconds for a person to be murdered.
But okay, so I hear what you're saying. Maybe you just turned away, sip your coffee at that given time.
Yes.
But what my point is, in terms of the question I'm asking you, doesn't that show a total disregard
yes, I do
or
agree.
lack of faith in the police system if I don't even care if I stand next to the police department and commit a crime?
I won't really stretch it that far. Like I said before, that most crime that occurs are opportunity. The suspect may have passed, saw the person there, go for his gun, come back, shoot, gone. It's an opportunity.
You don't see that as an embarrassment for your force?
I wouldn't see it as that.
It doesn't bother you?
Of course it do. But I don't see it as an embarrassment. It happens, murders happen in police stations, right? So let's be real. But at the end of the day, when you look at the whole situation, if the opportunity does not present itself, then it's not going to happen. The way how the Hattieville police station is situated, you have a door that is locked, or a glass door that is kept closed. And I've said to them, I don't want that door to be closed anymore. There are several things that are occurring in Hattieville that I really and truly was not happy with. And when those two murders took place in Hattieville the other day, it irritates me. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think that we could have done more to avoid them from occurring. And because of that, I have shifted up Hattieville. So you go to Hattieville now, there are a new set of police officers there, including the OC was changed. We need to ensure we have people on the grounds who are going to do the work. And you find that we have a culture where we used to believe in sending officers to work where they're from. I do not believe in it. You send officers to work where they're from, they're too familiar, they're too compromised, and you don't get nothing out of them because they're afraid of everybody. That has to change. And so I have been doing my best to see how we can send officers to work in areas where they're not from with the hope that we're going to get better production from them. Hattieville is a concern. The amount of murders we had in rural Belize City last year is alarming. And I've said to the officer in charge of Eastern Division, I do not want to see the same this year. And so we're doing what we can to ensure that this year is not a replica of last year.
And the other areas we've seen in the north, in the south, where we've seen?
The south, again, we're seeing that a number of gang members who are from the south, but were living in Belize City, are now moving back to the south. And they're taking with
areas
them,
like Independence
yes,
now having
they're taking with
spikes.
them No, independence won't have a spike, no.
Well, if you go from 0 to 1, that's a spike, you know.
That's not a spike. We have to be reasonable. Marlene, we'd never live in a crime-free society.
Agreed.
Never, never.
Agreed.
Even the most peaceful nation on earth, they do have murders.
Yes.
Right? So we have to be fair.
But not as many as we do, and not at the frequency that we do. Okay, you want to get specific? Not per capita as we do.
I do agree with you. And while we look at the U.S., let's say for example, and the U.S. in a whole have a lower murder per capita rate than Belize.
Absolutely.
But there are 5 states or 5 cities in the U.S. that have a higher per capita murder than Belize. But that is not going to be highlighted, right? So, and they have more resources to fight crime than we do, right? But that is no justification for us with our crime problem.
Yeah.
When you look at Jamaica, you see a lot of investment in the police in Jamaica. For January alone this year, Jamaica had 116 murders for January alone. Trinidad again, a lot of investment in police in Trinidad. For January, Trinidad had 49 murders. So I still believe that.
And then third on the list in the Caribbean?
Yes, Belize is.
Is Belize.
Yes, but
we're
we're
talking
still
about million populations
no,
in the millions.
Even when I go, Marlene, into per capita, Belize is still lower than them.
Yes.
Let's be fair to our country now. We can't paint our country
but that's
so
why I said
black.
we are third on the list.
Yes.
So
and
we don't want to be Jamaica. We don't want to be Trinidad. We don't
totally
want to be
agree with
whatever city you're referencing in the United States.
Yes.
Let's focus on the problem we have.
But Marlene, why we don't want to beat them, we can still make a comparison with ourselves and them to see what they have to fight crime compared to what we have. And despite the fact that we don't have as much as they do, we're not as bad as them. It means that we're doing something that is working for us. So we need to give our people credit.
Okay.
Right? It's a matter of being objective.
Okay.
Right? And if one murder occurred to me, it is one too much. But again, I'm not going to be naive to think that because I'm the commissioner, crime will be no more. That won't happen. There's no magic stick that you can wave and say crime is gone. It is always going to be here. After you and I are gone, crime will be here. But what we need to do as a department is to do what we can to be able to contain it. And our people who criticize about crime and are fearful, they have a right to be fearful and have a right to criticize. And it is our duty to ensure that we dispel the fear that they have. And I believe that we're doing what we can to be able to do that. If we can do more, the answer is yes. And I have been pushing and employing my officers, they need to do more.
You have a new Minister of National Security. We're about to go into a budget cycle. The last time you were here, you said that in the past 3 years, when we've actually seen an increase in crime, correct me if my recollection is wrong, you've had a reduction in numbers in your forces. This year is the first year you've taken on a new intake.
Yes.
I hear your point about resources. It is a valid one. But have you, the politicians are the first ones to hear the concern about crime, you know. When you, as the commissioner, go to the government, or when you're putting together your budget, are you bringing the issue up that if people want to get serious, and from the political level, from the top level, if they're serious about crime, they have to allocate the right resources, and that you also have to choose the proper people to execute the jobs?
I fully agree. And for this year's budget, we are requesting for 2 recruit squads. If we get 1, we'll be happy. If we do get that, then we'll have a recruit squad again this year. That way we can bring our numbers back to where it used to be. The recruits we have in training are expected to graduate on the 6th of March this year. So within a week and a half, they should be out to be a part of our police bodies across the country to deal with the issue of crime.
And we can't let you leave, of course, with talking with the issue that was on the news last night. We know that the police has opened an investigation into your former boss. Now, let's start with what the demands are. First off, their request by the unions was for an independent investigation. The police has been tasked with that job, and naturally, people are skeptical of how thorough this investigation will be.
Well, for me, Marlene, like I've said, if I have a job to do, I do my job. For me, the police department or the commissioner of police is not a political officer. And I believe that if it is that we must do an investigation, it must be done to the best of our ability. And that is the spirit with which I had tasked Marco Vidal to take up that investigation.
Let me step back a bit. The police department should not be influenced by politics, by partisan politics, or by politicians. But we have seen it in the past. And one of the clearest examples, well documented, is where the opposition had to go to court to force the hand of the then commissioner, you were not the commissioner, to follow through on charges against former Minister Elvin Penner for what was already playing out as a crime he had committed. So when we see that, understand that that is our background as the public, as to how serious the police department takes their job in investigating politicians.
Marlene, I am not going to speak to that. I was not the commissioner then.
Agreed.
But
you can understand that that is our foundational knowledge of how it works.
I am not that person. I'm not that commissioner. And I don't expect that I'm going to be judged based on what happened in the past under a previous commissioner. If it happens under me, they'll judge me by that. I know what my roles are, I know what my functions are, and I am expected to do it, and I will do it. And at the end of the day, I know for a fact that no matter what is done, there will always be skeptics. Some reasonable and some unreasonable. But so long as I know I'm doing the right thing, then I don't worry about skeptics.
Why did you feel that, Vidal, and this is not in any way saying that he is the wrong person, but why did you feel that he was the right person? Help us to feel more comfortable.
Marlene, I'm not going to go into too much specifics. Mr. Vidal is an assistant commissioner of police.
Yes.
He has a wealth of experience and knowledge in intelligence gathering. Mr. Vidal have done several major investigations for which we have seen convictions. He did the case with Abadi. It was him who investigated that. He did the case with Vieira, the guy from the forensic lab with the gun. He did that. And Mr. Vidal also did the case with Mr. Parman, all of which were convictions. I do not see why anyone would want to think that he's not capable of doing this investigation.
So you're going on his track record with successful convictions in the past?
And those are persons who had influence, right? And he investigated those matters, and at the end of the day, we got convictions for him.
Have you given him full autonomy? I mean, has it been communicated clearly that no matter whose name will be involved, no matter what type of, what influence or what phone call may come down, what any minister may say, that he must proceed with this investigation with absolutely no interference?
If there should be any phone call coming, it will come to me. And I will know what to say or what to do. The functions of the police should not be interfered upon by nobody. The Prime Minister have said it and made it clear that we must do an investigation. It is expected that an investigation will be done. And as I said before, I have every confidence in the person I have appointed to do that investigation. I've said to Mr. Vidal, he is free to select whoever he wants to be a part of his team. And no matter where that person is, that person will be made available to be a part of his team. He has selected his team, and that investigation is on its way.
Have you given any thought to inviting another country or another representative to participate or to oversee?
I don't understand why. There is a need for me to bring somebody to oversee the work
or to help
that we are doing. To me, it speaks to incompetence. I don't think that we are incompetent. Some people out there believe so. I don't share that view.
I understand why naturally the first thought is that that may be offensive, But it's not just about whether or not, or it has little to do with whether or not the police has the capacity to do it. You function in a society that needs to trust the work that is being done. I'll give you a clear example. There are times where the FBI comes in to help. Does it mean that the police can't solve the crime on their own? No. It is extra assistance with extra resources. That's helpful.
What people don't understand is the limit that FBI have when they come. It is not what people think that FBI is out to investigate.
No.
They don't have that authority. They may offer assistance. Yes. And in any investigation, if it is that we require some expertise that we don't have,
yes,
we request it. But to bring somebody to oversee
or
an
to
investigation,
participate or offer extra resources.
In terms of resources, I have no issue. But I am not going to agree to anybody overseeing the work that we're doing. To me, that's an insult to us. When any other country is doing any investigation, they don't send somebody from Belize come and oversee what we're doing. Why we always think that for something to be good, it has to be foreign or must have some foreign influence. We must learn first and foremost to trust and have confidence in ourselves instead of in other persons. That is the reason why many countries look down on us, because we don't give ourselves the credit that we rightly deserve.
I don't know if your assessment of having external agencies or forces assist, not necessarily oversee, but assist in an investigation is any condemnation.
I've said,
it is just simply objectivity.
It's
how we have the OAS or
yes,
other agencies coming in and they will
yes,
oversee an election. Those things happen.
I have said.
As I said, you have the FBI, but the people
I have no difficulty.
Understand. Let me just finish. So the people understand that it is a touchy situation when you have to investigate your former boss.
I don't see that as being touchy. If you know what your duties are, what the oath of office you took is, then there's no difficulty. As I've said in an interview I gave before, if my mother were to commit a crime, the oath of office I took dictates that I must investigate her. She's my mother. If I can investigate my mother...
kind of things about your mom.
No, but it's true. If I can investigate my mother, why won't I be able to investigate my former boss? Mm-hmm. Let's be real. If it is that you're a person who have a moral compass and you know what your duties and functions are, then you have no difficulty doing that. Going back to what you said in terms of getting assistance, in terms of resources, I have no difficulty with that. There may be certain things that we may need to do some analysis on. We may not have the resources. We can request the FBI to do that. And if a matter of fact, the fact that the investigation do have some international implication, we'll need assistance from the U.S. to do certain things in the U.S. for us. So it has to be that joint collaboration with us and the U.S. in terms of looking at investigation. But it is not to say that the U.S. is going to oversee what we're doing. What needs to be done over that side, we request from them to do it. We have the MLAT, Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, that we will be using to be able to get certain information from the U.S. If it were up to me, I would want that our investigator go to the U.S. and interview those individuals rather than having somebody from there do it for us. But we'll see how that works out.
And how can you also, at least for the public's perspective, give them some sort of assurance that, you know, this is a case where if the person you're investigating has heavy political influence. And as Marlene said earlier, I think a lot of people are thinking is that, well, there will be phone calls coming from this one. There may be people trying to compromise the investigation in some way. So is there anything that you can say to sort of give the public some sort of assurance that, you know, we've seen people, you know, people often make the comment that, you know, that people may be untouchable or people, or that there won't be any real result coming from it. So is there anything that you want to say just to unequivocally make clear to the public the type of investigation that you are doing?
Well, let me start by saying that the Prime Minister have said certain things. And one thing I know about the Prime Minister is that when he said he wants something to be done, it's because he wanted to be done. And I don't think it will do the government any good to try and conceal whatever, if there's any wrongdoing that the former minister have done, for them to conceal it. I'm not saying that there is some wrongdoing, but if it is that there is any, it won't do them any good to conceal that. And so I also believe that it is in their best interest that the investigation be conducted, and be conducted in the right manner. If it is that there should be some attempt for political interference, then I will know what to do and who to go to be able to take that off my back. Because at the end of the day, if we are to do something, then we must do it to the best of our ability. There should be no shortcut or no shortchanging. Wherever the investigation leads, that is where we're going to go. If at the end of the investigation there is something, we believe there is something, the file goes to the DPP, and the DPP will going to instruct us as to how to proceed from there. But I want to say again to the Belizean people, we're going to do our utmost best to do the best investigation that we can. We understand the concerns of the people, we understand the gravity of the investigation, we know the person that we're investigating and the type of influence that he may have, but we do not foresee that those are going to be any problem to us at this time.
You've shied away from saying any type of timeline for the investigation.
It is difficult, Marlene. I cannot set a timeline.
But has it started?
Yes.
Because you said we will get the evidence, or we will use the MLAT, so I'm just being sure.
I cannot just wake up one morning and say I'm going to write a request for MLAT. There is a process that must be followed.
But
there's
the balls,
trial.
The wheels are already turning already.
Yes. There is a trial in Utah. I cannot write the US and say, well, not me. I will write the AG ministry. The AG ministry then write
also the current minister of national security.
So I cannot just say to the AG, please request from the US through MLAT the whole file on Lev Derman. That is cynical. We need to see the transcript of the case and a certified court copy of the transcript, not one that you can get from Google or wherever. And then we need to go through that to see what was said and what are the evidence that we need to request. We know for sure that he have said about text messages. We need to request those text messages.
Have you made a similar request here? Because the number that was used is actually a Belize City cell. It's a Digicel number.
Digicel don't store numbers for too long. I think it's for 2 years, I think, and then it goes.
Because you do have in your arsenal the capacity to get text communication.
Yes, we have to
from
apply.
The phone companies.
We have to apply to the court for a
we haven't
court
gotten
order.
there yet.
BTL don't keep text messages that long. The US might. Okay. And so we will have to request our US counterpart to make that request for us, or they give us what they have already. Okay. Because similarly they have it already, right? But we have to just ensure that what they have is a certified copy from the telephone company that they retrieve it from, right? So when we get the transcript, it will then tell us the scope of what we need to request. What are the different documents that we need? Yes, we might need to get some statements that were given, as the case may be, but we need to see what the transcript has in, and then based on that, we make our request. Now,
so from what you're saying right now, the team has been organized, but you're waiting.
No, we have started. There are certain things that we can do without the transcript. So those things that we can do without the transcript, we have started to do already.
Is the FIU involved?
They have to be involved, yes.
Okay. All right. There's also an investigation into Hermann Longsword.
Yes, and that is fully underway as well.
Okay.
As well as the Julian Chow High School.
Will there be updates provided to the public? And I know people want to feel that this is a transparent process, and I know when an investigation is ongoing, there are limited details you can provide. But is there anything you can say to the Belizean public as we progress? If you at least say the request the MLAT went in, that we know the wheels are moving.
Well,
or otherwise we'll think people are sitting on their hands in the office.
To give update on the two audit reports. I met with the director of FIU last week, Monday, and we discussed what we need FIU to do for us. The director have given his full support in assisting us in obtaining the banking information that we need on the individuals. And so I believe by now the investigators might have obtained some. But again, this information is not something you get overnight. The bank do need time to be able to put together the information, then send to FIU, then we get it from FIU. So we have met, and it's a joint investigation between FIU and the police with the audit reports.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner, we appreciate you coming in and talking about all these other things. I believe there's one other issue that just recently took place. There's a video that's circulating online. I don't mean to spring it on you. We just got it as well, of a police officer.
With a knife. Yes, I saw it, and I have directed that to Professional Standard Branch. I spoke to the young man last night, the victim, and I've directed him what to do. He sent me the video, and I told him to go to Professional Standard Branch this morning, and that matter will be addressed.
You still have a firm position against this type of behavior?
We cannot countenance those type of behaviors.
Why is it that you think these officers feel empowered or entitled enough to behave like this with videos and cell phone cameras? How do they feel comfortable with this type of behavior?
I guess some of them just don't like the job that they have, maybe.
Could it be that they perhaps feel that they're not going to face the consequences?
I don't think so, because I know how I behave.
Okay. So you condemn this action?
Of
you
course
can
I do.
explicitly tell, because you know it'll be everywhere within the next few hours.
I put a comment on the Facebook page last night, or post, regarding it.
Good.
I spoke to the young man, I told him what to do, and there is going to be follow through.
Thank you very much for responding to that. Thank you for coming in. We know you've had a long night, and we appreciate the updates.
No problem, thanks.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll have more Open Your Eyes, so stay tuned.